that good to see that happen? It's so fun watching all the baptisms, and it's awesome. We love it. First service, we had a little guy. He went in with his goggles on. It was so good. It's so good. Oh, well, hey, we're gonna jump in today, and we are just if you're new, join us. We're so glad you're here. Love having you with us, and we're in a study right now going through 1st and 2nd Timothy, and I'll just kind of give you a real quick. So really what we're talking about is this idea, what does it mean to be a disciple or follower of Jesus? And we've been saying this for the last couple of years, that oftentimes we can find ourselves not being a follower of Christ, but following the things of culture or the world. But what does it really mean to I'm following Jesus? And where you look at your life and go, are the things that matter to Jesus matter to me? Or the values of Jesus, are those my values? And this idea of patterning my life after him. Following him means I follow him. You're following the leader, meaning I'm walking in his footsteps. So the things that he did, I would do. And one of the things that Jesus did, amongst many, is he was in the Word. He was feasting on the Word. One of my favorite examples, there's this moment where Jesus it's a defining moment, and it's a moment when Satan's there to tempt him, and it's in the wilderness, and if Jesus doesn't pass this test, then everything else that he did doesn't matter, because he would have sinned. That would have been it. And so in this moment, it came down to a critical, it's here, it's now. And Jesus in that moment said, man does not live by bread alone, but by the Word of God. And it fueled him. It was something that Jesus knew in that moment that he needed to recall, and the Spirit of God helped him recall what he had been doing for 40 days before that. He wasn't just starving himself in the natural, he was feeding himself in the spiritual. And I think so often in our lives, how many of y'all get hungry? Let's just ask the question. You guys are in the 11 o'clock service, so if you didn't eat, you're going to be feeling it about halfway through. And I don't know about you, but a whole day can go by. I notice this. I can get caught up in meetings, and it's 4, 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and I'm like, man, I haven't even eaten lunch or breakfast or dinner or anything today. And whenever I get hungry, I don't know about you, but I start getting tired, or I get kind of sometimes these headaches. I just get to the point where I need to eat something, low blood sugar, all of that. And I started thinking the parallel of that is true when we think about feeding on God's Word. Because so often in our life, don't we react instead of respond to situations in life? Think of things that come up in your life, things that catch you off guard, things that you are surprised by, things that, man, that did not go how I wanted it planned. Any planners here where you're like, hey, I've got my life planned, we got it figured out? You got some of us that are just let's make it up as we go, right? But those of us who like to plan things out when it doesn't go planned, and even if you are a whimsical type person that's spontaneity and adaptability are all your strength finders, there still come those moments in your life when you're blindsided or when things catch you off guard, decisions you got to make that you feel paralyzed by. And it's in those moments, don't you wish you had something to withdraw in your spiritual bank account? So often in our life, we tend to react to things, we don't respond. And there's a difference between the two. The difference is that when I react to a situation or someone, I'm reacting from flesh to flesh. Now, that might be a weird saying. The Bible talks about the flesh is the part of us that has that bent towards sin, bad behaviors, all of those things. And so often in life, are we controlled? Are we led by our flesh? Are we led by the Spirit of God, which oftentimes is driven through the words that God gives us in His Scripture? And so if I want to be led by that, I don't want to react to situations. I want to respond to Him in the midst of those things. But it's just like everything in life. Prayer is the same way. So often in life we do go through something and we're like, oh my goodness, I should be praying more. I should be praying more. I should be reading my Bible more. But life is crazy. Life is hectic. I get it. Everybody looks at me like, you're the pastor. I bet you spend 80 hours a week praying and reading your Bible. Well, I do. No, I don't. Are you kidding me? No way. I wish I could. And it's just the reality is this, that life is busy and there's things you got to jump into, and there's conversations and this and this and that, and you're raising kids, you're going to work, you're going to school, you got practice after, you got a big game for the day, you got homework assignments due, you just got, life is crazy, life is busy. But what happens is, let's just be honest, is all these days when we could be making even little deposits, just little deposits in God's Word, just little deposits. Man, I'm going to read His Word today for 5 minutes. And maybe it's not 5 hours like I wish it could be, But even that 5 minutes or that 15 or that 20 minutes are deposits. So that later on, when something happens in life, you're not reacting to stuff and certainly not being led by your flesh. You're being led by the Spirit in partnership with the word deposits that have been going into your life. That's exactly what Jesus did in that moment. And there's other times when he would slip away in the busy hecticness of life because he knew how important it was to spend time talking with his Father in prayer, to spend time meditating on the Scriptures. Jesus had the Old Testament, the New Testament wasn't written, but Jesus would still feed on that. And as a result of that, he was able to face situations in life that he was coming out of the overflow, not coming out of a deficit. And so when we talk today, we're going to hit it here in a second. That's kind of an intro, but I'd love for you to grab your Bibles if you have one. If you don't have one, you can use your phones, and there's like YouVersion, which is free. But I also encourage you, we have a study guide for 1st and 2nd Timothy. The reason that we put this together is, if you grab your phone, you can use 2 apps. You can use the Grace Chapel app, the Vertical Pursuit app. This study guide is on there. The QR code's on the screen if you want it. And so we really encourage you to use the study guide. We got questions on there. So maybe in your life, during your weekly schedules, you can carve out some time, read through it. We'll teach on some of the pieces. We don't have time to get into all of it. And then you can go back and read through, and there's discussion questions. Our staff put a really amazing discussion questions together. And so you could do this. Our hope is you're doing this in community. Our hope is that you've got 2 or 3 friends that you're grabbing coffee, breakfast, or hanging out, and you're actually reading together, sharing together. Maybe you're in a discipleship group or discipleship cohort. If you're not, find some friends and start one, or let us know. We'll help you get plugged into one. But there's just something about feeding on God's word in relationship with others. Like, hey, what'd you get out of that? Or what does that mean to you? And just being able to digest it is powerful. That's our hope through the next several weeks together. But what I really want to share, too, as we get into it, because Timothy is a guy that's the protege of Paul. If you missed this last week, you can go online. But just a quick context is that this was a letter written. This is when we read the Bible, we think of it, okay, like that's the Bible, and it is. But when we read 1st and 2nd Timothy, see them as letters. Letters that then became, in the Bible, they were inspired by the Holy Spirit. And so when you look at who is Timothy, Timothy was the protege of Paul. He started this church in a city called Ephesus. I talked about this all last week. Ephesus was a very interesting city because it was a kind of a metropolis. It was a port city. You had people pilgrimaging from all over the world coming there. It was a religious holy ground to the temple Artemis. And so there all kinds of pagan stuff happening there. It was a really gnarly place in many ways, spiritually, demonically. A lot of warfare going on. And a lot of that started to creep into this church. And so Paul, who started the church, looked at Timothy and said, you take it over, you shepherd them, I'm going to Jerusalem. And as we kind of zoom out, Paul empowers Timothy, and as he leaves to Jerusalem, soon we'll read that Paul ends up imprisoned under house arrest by Rome. If you don't know anything at that time, Rome was the empire in power. And I'll talk about who was the Nero at the time and why this is significant. But Rome was not a good, if you're a Roman citizen, it worked good for you, for the most part. If you were not a Roman citizen, it did not go well for you. And so at this time, Paul, he's going to Rome. While he gets arrested there, he realizes while he's arrested, while he's in prison, that he's not going to get out. And you see in this letter, it's this letter of encouragement to this young brother Timothy that he said, hey, you take it over, you do it. It's meant to encourage Timothy. But also at the same time, the church has gnarly stuff, false doctrines coming in, really bad theology, things going on in the Ephesian culture that was not in line with God's word, started to creep in, and it started to infect and affect the church. And so Paul is trying to guide Timothy, saying, hey, you got to get people back aligned. You got to get them straightened because there's some not good stuff that's going on in there. And to be honest with you, this is one of the reasons that God put Timothy, this book and letters for us to go through, because I see some trends in our modern Western culture in the church, the same things he addresses. And I really felt like for us to go through it is even maybe an aligning time for us. The perspective that God's word gives us as we try to interpret life, things happening in the world around us, you're going to see all of that come out. It's not a coincidence that I think even some things we're seeing in current events are going to come up as we talk about, as we go through 1st and 2nd Timothy. So that's all kind of a preface. Really, again, we're in week 2, so I need to lay some foundation. Let me start with the verse. So go with me to 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1. He says it this way. He says, I urge, everybody say urge. I know it's a weird word. I urge then, first of all, meaning like top priority. Like this is the important thing. Don't miss this. He says, the first thing I want you to do. And then he goes on to saying, I urge you then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people. Now, why is he saying this? Why is he saying, like, I urge you? Now, the word for urge here, like, I know we can break it down in different categories, but if you have a hankering for something, you're hungry, you long for, you urge something, you desire, you crave it, and you satisfy. Like, right now, to be honest with you, second service started, like, I literally came into the service craving a cheeseburger. I just straight up, I'm like, my stomach's been growling for the last 30 minutes, and I'm literally like, I wonder what we're going to do for lunch today. That's okay. That's not what he's talking about here. The word urge here is this sense of urgency. It's this sense of priority and conviction. It's like, I need you to get this. This is dire. This is significant. This is important. It's almost like he's pleading, like, make this your absolute most important priority right now. Which you got to ask, like, where's the urgency coming from? Like, why? What is going on? Well, I'll unpack for you in a few moments here what is happening in the culture, what's happening specifically in churches at this time, and the oppression and the persecution that's going on under Rome's empire. And this is a time when them as a church, I mean, it's crazy stuff going on. As you read later, even in chapter 2, which I address, I'm not going to hit it here in the morning, but there's some current things, there's confusion, like what's happening with all of this? How do you make sense of that? This is why Paul says it starts with the right posture. He says, you need to pray. Because what's going to happen, and notice this when he gets into 4 words here. He doesn't just say, I need you to pray. I urge you to pray. We can sit here and go, great. Paul's telling us it's important we should pray. Notice he didn't say, and I urge you to pray, 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 pray. He could have just, okay, we got it, Paul. It's important. We should pray. He doesn't say pray as significance by just using the word pray. He actually uses 4 different words to describe what prayer is like. So when he says, I want you to have petitions, there's a certain type of understanding of prayer that goes with that. And then when he says, I want you to pray, like, what does that actually mean? Because when we use the word prayer, it's like, what does that mean? And then he says intercession, that's a form of prayer, and then thanksgiving. And all 4 of these, don't miss this, all 4 of these are critical to understanding how they can be anchored and hopeful at a time when there's a lot of chaos and confusion. Now, I'll say it this way. Okay, I'll just tell you. Some of you know this. I've mentioned this before. So I grew up, I have a thing called Meniere's disease. It's not a big deal. It sounds probably more serious than what it is. But anybody here have it, by the way? I'm sort of curious. Great. Okay. It's like, all right, that's okay. Let's hope we'll be like, friends, let's go get a burger together. But so Meniere's disease is basically, it has to do with your equilibrium inside your head and your inner ear and all of that. Inherited. I've had it for years. Didn't know I had it. Had symptoms of it. Symptoms are pretty, can range from a mild day, which is like dizziness. Anybody here ever, let's just start with that. Anybody here ever been dizzy before? Okay. That feeling you get on like a merry-go-round? Hey, remember those metal things they used to have at playgrounds? Where you would get on that sucker and it would toss kids off. You guys remember that? I think they're banned from playgrounds now. Like the centrifugal force on those suckers would get humming. Kids are flying everywhere. It was awesome. It was like, that's the way playgrounds are supposed to be. Now they're all wrapped in saran wrap. Anyways, it's bubble wrap. But the whole point of this, if you know what dizziness feels like, you know how uncomfortable that is, right? When you get dizzy, it throws you off. When you're dizzy, you can't make sense sometimes of even walking straight. You kind of move a little bit to left or right. You stagger, certainly when things spin. So when I get these episodes, they happen every once in a while, usually weekly, where just things start getting dizzy. And some days they're mild. Like I probably get it almost every day to some extent. Just sometimes I don't even notice it until I lay down. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Never noticed that. Why is that painting spinning like that? And it literally does do that. If you've ever had vertigo, anybody have vertigo? So I get episodes of vertigo where literally like the wall is going like that. It's hard to explain to people. It's like everything's just turning. It's a trip. Let me just tell you. And oftentimes it gets so bad you get nauseous. And anyways. I'm just confessing to you. All right. here's the reality, though. I started thinking about this idea of vertigo, and when you're off balance and you're all over the place, you can't make sense of things. I felt like the Lord was saying, how many of us struggle with spiritual vertigo? Meaning this, that you're going through life, and all of a sudden something comes up, and you can't process it through God's word that gives you stability, and so you process it through your flesh or human reasoning. And sometimes that human reasoning or the fleshly desires, our pride, our propensity, like self-centeredness, confusion, can cause you to go through life like, man, I am just like trying to find out how I walk a path here. I am just holding on. I'm feeling nauseous. These are metaphors. I'm feeling nauseous. I can't make sense of right side up. What is truth anymore? I don't know. I mean, I hear all the information coming at me from all over the place. How do I make sense of that? And I think there's a lot of us going through that, maybe on a personal level. Maybe you're a student here, and you're in junior high or high school, and you're trying to go through your class, like, I don't know who my friends are. I don't know if I belong here. I don't know who I am. I'm confused about my identity. I'm confused about my gender. I'm confused about my friendship, my career. Like, I'm going to college. I don't know what I want to do. I don't even know if I should go to college. I don't know if I should date this person. I don't know, like, anything else. I got health issues. Which doctor do I go see? I'm watching current events. Who knows what I should believe? What's true? What's not true? Am I making any sense, right? We all have probably something going on in your world where you've got some sort of level of spiritual vertigo. Some of you might be little small things. Some of us are like, okay, I'm totally nauseous right now. How do I get off this ride? And what I really want to encourage is this idea that when we get into God's word and through prayer aligns us and gives us stability, which is what we're going to talk about today. How do we find our stability? How do we find our bearing? How do we avoid living in this chaotic spiritual vertigo episode that we can go through? You know, one of the things I've noticed, did you guys notice this too? There was a thing we went through, it was called COVID. One of the things that should not shock me, it doesn't shock me anymore, but it did shock me, was how quickly, and I see it happening again right now in our world, but I saw it really during COVID, how quickly people are deceived and divisive. It shouldn't shock me anymore. I'm seeing an episode of that happening again in our world. How quickly people are deceived and divisive. And I started thinking about, just to give another parallel, years ago, you guys know what Black Friday is? When you go shopping. And I remember, like, my son wanted a game system. And so as a good parent, I went to the ends of the earth to call Walmart. Walmart was the ends of the earth. And I can remember getting up early at like 3 a.m. and making the trek there and going in. And I was like, great, I'm going to be in the first like 10 customers to try to get one of these game systems. And some of you are like, dude, that's so inappropriate. The rest of you are like, do you not get how important this is to make sure this happens? Like, mission needs to be accomplished. So I get in there and no joke, like, this is crazy. And I know some of you are like, what was that, Walmart, Mike? I'm like, I understand that. But the reality is this, is like, as I go down the aisle and there's the game systems, I get in line and all of a sudden 2 dads start fighting. Like, because one got one and the other one didn't, and like literally fighting. And I'm like, what is going on right now? Like, what is happening? This is ridiculous. This is crazy. And I would say this. I really think there's a veil. There's a veil that's an illusion of how civilized we think we really are as a society. It is a thin veil. Thin veil. And I think for us as a church, what does it mean for us to not get caught up in the deceptions of the day? And that's why the Lord really led me to us in this season, which I don't think is a coincidence, to be traveling through 1st and 2nd Timothy, because he really addresses this. And we have got to be people who find our bearing in God's word and through prayer and the Holy Spirit leading us, so that we don't get caught up in what the world is going to get caught up on. I think these are days that we have got to be discerning people. And so it's so critical for us to be in God's word, to be in prayer together. God, what is your perspective? God, help me understand that. So that's what they were going through. I think it's so relevant for us today. So he says these 4 things. He's like, hey, I want you to be in prayer, but here's 4 things. So we'll put up the verse again. Notice what he says. He wants petitions. That's the first thing. What does it mean to be petitioning? What does that mean? Well, the word petition here, it's the idea of letting your needs be known. Anybody here have any needs? I do. Great, I'm the only one. Thank you. We're going to start our own support group for those of us. You're all welcome to come. You have needs. Yes, you do. And what he says here, the word for petition, it means to have a posture of, God, I depend on you to sustain what nobody else can provide for me. I wish I could tell you as a pastor, my first response to everything is pray, 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 pray. But I'm also a dude, and I'm also a leader, and I'm also just a person. And so sometimes my propensity in a situation is to find a solution or a resolution. And then if I exhaust all those things, then I'll be like, oh yeah, I need to be praying about this. And so what happens is Jesus isn't our first option. He's our last resort. And you and I all struggle with the same thing. And what Paul's telling Timothy is like, listen, this is so important, foundational. Everybody has a need. And in prayers, when we say, God, I have these needs, and it's not just that I have needs, it's a posture more than anything. It's not just about the request. It's a, God, I need you. You are my sustainer. It's an acknowledgement, not just I come to God with a shopping list. It's that I come to God with this sense of, God, I need you. You are the source of every supply and resource in my life. You are the Jehovah Jireh. God, you are my provider. It's a posture, it's a recognition more than it is just I need these things. I love this. I don't know if anybody else struggles with this, but do you all struggle sometimes praying your needs to God and then things don't happen? Anybody here, you pray and it instantly just gets answered? Okay. You know what sometimes is scarier, though? It's almost scarier when God does immediately answer your prayers. Because you're like, whoa, wow, that's powerful. But it's hard when we go sometimes like a day. Oh, shoot, God, I needed this, and there's a timeline, there's a deadline. I haven't got it here yet. God, come on. If only there was like a tracking system with God, right? You all know what I'm talking about. Anybody? Amazon, right? UPS? I'm expecting a package today. Craziest thing about it. The thing I was tracking that's supposed to come in today, this is no joke. Like I looked at my tracking earlier the week, and I'm like, sweet, this is like Friday. Friday it says, it's in Portland. That's encouraging. Saturday, I'm like, it's in Indiana. What the? How many of you know once it's in the state or the city, it stays? None of this like, hey, we're messing with you. I just feel like just messing with it. How many of you feel like that's true with God in prayer sometimes? God, I prayed today, like, God, where's it at? Where's it at? God, what's going on? And we don't even know what's happening. God's timing is perfect. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. One of the things that I want to pass on to you that's helped me is this. Listen, you can write this down. This really helped my prayer life years ago. Prayer is not just wanting from, but waiting with. Hear that again. Prayer is not just wanting from, but waiting with. And when we come before Jesus, we come before the Lord in prayer, we bring our needs, but it's not just, God, like, you're the Amazon in the sky. Can you just, like, show me the tracking? Can you just, like, make sure this happens so I can check the box? And he's like, no, listen. I want you to bring everything. If it's important to you, it's important to me. I know sometimes we over-spiritualize stuff, and we're like, and then we compare. I do this all the time. I'm like, here's my needs that I'm struggling with or I need God to provide. And then I look at somebody else's life is worse than mine. And I'm like, well, I shouldn't even pray about these things. At least I'm not going through that. And God's like, don't play that game. Don't edit your prayers. Just bring them to him. Just say, hey, if it matters to you right now. Now, meeting with him, it might change. You might come in with this, God, this is the most important thing. And then you walk out of the time with God and he's like, and you go, Maybe that's in the right order that it needs to be. But don't try to pre-edit that before you go and talk before him. But he wants you to know, like, bring everything. If it matters to you, it matters to him. He wants you to come and share those things. But he doesn't want you just to come with the list. Yes, bring the list, but he's like, hey, hang with me. I want you to spend time together. And maybe the waiting is meant to be more about relationship building and being more in tune with the provider than just getting the provision. Number two is this. He moves on. He doesn't just talk about petitions. He uses the word prayers, which we just go, okay, prayers. But the word for prayer is different. It's not just like a generic word for prayer. The word here for prayer is the idea. It's about proximity, closeness. And this is the one I love probably more than all the words he uses out of the four, is this word here, prayer. It literally, in the Greek, it means to have access with proximity. And it parallels what we read in Hebrews when it talks about God's throne room. and prayer. Let me just read that to you. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16 says, therefore, let us approach the throne of grace. Notice it doesn't say the throne of hatred towards you. He says it's a throne of grace with confidence. Everybody say confidence. Notice he doesn't say, hey, we approach the throne of grace with hesitation. He says, no, with confidence, assurance. And he says that when we do that, it's so that we may receive mercy, find grace for help in our time of our need. Now, this is what, if you've never heard this before, this is the quick picture I want to give you. Jesus lived on this life, incarnate, God in the flesh, walked amongst us, gave his life for us on the cross to save us from being separated from him because of something called sin. There needed to be a penalty. Jesus died on the cross so that we all can have access to him. And we have access to him by faith, not cleaning ourselves up, not making ourselves perfect, but just simply believing that Jesus is the only way, that he came for us. And it's a statement of, I believe. It's just raw faith, even with doubts and questions. It's not having 100%, I know everything. It's just the one thing I do know is I need Jesus. I may not know all the answers to all these other spiritual questions I got, but the one thing I do know is I need him. And then he says that in that moment when we believe, he gives us access. And Jesus, who, as he died, he resurrected, overcame sin so that he can actually promise us life. Because let me tell you this, there's a lot of religions out there with a lot of religious leaders that overpromise and underdeliver because none of them went to death and overcame death, so they can't have anything to stand on with their promises. So when Jesus says, hey, I can offer you life, we're like, yes, you can. You are the author of life. You are the overcomer of death, therefore you have the life to offer. And so Jesus, after that, it says that he ascended to heaven, and right now Jesus is sitting on the throne in heaven, and he is ruling from there. So sometimes we have this picture of Jesus like things are happening in our personal world. You're going through a personal crisis. You just got dumped. Somebody broke up with you. Just got your first F in school. Didn't make the team. Lost your job. Went broke. Some health issues. Marriage falls apart. All those crises that we go through. And then we're like, where's Jesus at? Does he know what's going on? And if you're like me, like I can sometimes think prayerfully like, Jesus, hey, FYI, this is going on. Thinking he doesn't know. And I think oftentimes we think he's passive because he's not responding immediately, as if he's ignorant of what's going on in our life. So God, hey, newsflash, do I need to remind you? He's like, I know this. And not only is he aware on the throne, but he is working from the throne. You may not see him always working, but he is working. And I think we need to have this picture of him on his throne because listen, when everything is chaos in life, the one thing that brings me assurance is that Jesus is sitting on his throne and he is not in confusion. He is not out of control. He rules, he knows, and he is in place to bring peace into our lives. So no matter what you're going through, this is the most theological, foundational thing you need in your life right now is to know that we don't have Jesus who's spinning right now in confusion. He's in a place of clarity. He's a place of peace. He's sitting on his throne, and he rules, and he is not out of control, and he is not confused by what's going on in our society, our world, or our personal lives. So when we know that, this is who we're approaching. And the best way I can illustrate it, I probably use this a few times, and it might seem redundant to some, but I cannot literally find a better illustration. The best illustration I can come up with right now is this. How many of you have like a favorite athlete you follow? Anybody? Okay. How many of you have like favorite musician, someone that you would love to go to a concert and see perform? Okay. How many of you would love to meet that person? Yeah. What if I came to you right now and I said, hey, before the concert in their green room, I'm going to set up a meet and greet for you. Or if you have that star athlete, whatever sport it is, I'm saying, hey, before the big game, I'm going to set up a meet and greet so that you get to go hang out with them in the locker room. How many of you like, sign me up, let's go? So this is the picture I want to give you. I carry with me in my Bible as a reminder. And it's a pass that I have to wear to go into locker room with the Blazers to do chapel. Now, it's called a credential. This credential separates you from, let's just say it, the dangerous people. People that aren't supposed to be in there, right? The crazy fans. And what's interesting is like everybody has to have one of these, or security will make sure you don't even get 10 feet from there. Stop you before you even get in. But with this, and on the bottom of it, it says all access. And all access means all access. So it means to the locker room, coach's room. They've got a couple food rooms. I know I talk about food way too much, not enough. But here's the amazing thing. When you have one of these, you have access to go into the most forbidden place that everybody wants access to. And I know right now, if I came to you and said, hey, I can do this for you, everybody would want that. I get asked from pastors weekly, hey man, can I be your partner? And let me tell you something. You can go into a locker room and meet your star athlete, and that's awesome. That is, I get it. For everybody here, or maybe it's your favorite musician, and that's awesome. Let me tell you what's awesome. You know what's even greater than getting access to a locker room is getting access to the throne room of the creator of the universe. There is nothing like that. And it kind of disturbs me thinking that some of us would maybe rather have access to a fallible human being we worship than that we get to sit in the presence of the creator of all great things. That when we literally sit back and go, wait, he gives me access? Like when I say yes to Jesus, he puts an all access pass around me and he says, you can come to the throne room. You can come into my presence. You can bring whatever you have, the hardships, the trials, bring it all. I'm giving you access. Do we understand how significant that agreement and promise that he's given to us? Like this is his promise to us. He doesn't look at you and go, hey, this week you jacked up, messed up, you screwed up. This week you don't get access. He's like, listen, you are covered in the blood of Jesus. When you say yes to him, you have access, broken and all. We get to walk in and go, wow, Jesus, here's what's going on. He's like, yes, I'm here for you. Bring it. This is what I've created us for, is these moments. I'm telling you, this should radically change our prayer life. But I wonder sometimes if we just see prayer as more of a to-do thing than an opportunity that we have access. Can we just sit for a second? You have access to sit in the presence of the creator of our lives, the promiser of all life. I don't know about you, but there is no greater place than to be with him in his presence. And we just, through prayers, we just get to come before him. And I know this is true that some of us go like, okay, what should the posture be? Like, when you come into the throne room, is there like throne room etiquette? Like, what does that look like? And that's why I read to you the word. He says, we come in with confidence, don't we? And some translations say boldness. Like, you can come in boldly, confidently, not arrogantly. And I think there's two postures for many of us. I think sometimes when we come into the throne room of God, it literally should be like on our knees going, whoa, God, you are so holy. God, right now, as I'm just sitting here in prayer, I'm just thinking of the fact that, God, you are on the throne. God, you are holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. You rule and you rule and you rule. You are not disturbed. Your throne is a place of peace. It's a place to receive your promises and help. Your word just says to give us help in our time of need. You are holy, God. And I just wonder sometimes if we miss that posture. And then there's other times when it's like a locker room that you walk into, and when you walk in, there's moments when players are like dabbing it up. It's like, what's up, man? How you doing? And I wonder for some of us, if we need that posture too, when we pray, imagine that Jesus is there, and as he's on his throne, he actually comes up to us. He's like, hey, what's up? And he puts his arms around us, and he wants us to know, like, I'm with you. I'm with you. I want to walk with you every single day. I'm your friend. I am your Lord first, but I'm also your friend. And I want you to know that what matters to you, it does matter to me. And I want you to know that I have all the resources of heaven at my fingertips for what you need. I'm not a stingy God. I'm a God of abundance and blessing. And maybe it doesn't always equate. And when we go, this is what I'm praying for, this is what I wanted, he says, no, I know what you're praying for, but I know what you really need. And I'll make sure you always have what you need. And he's like, I'm never going to hold that back. Whatever you need, it may not be what you want, but it was everything you need, I will provide for you. And how many of you know, like when we come and pray before God, that sometimes we're like, okay, God, are you sure? Really? For reals? Can I bring really the hardest, deepest, darkest things in my life? I remember years ago, like I've shared this, losing my dad, and I was so angry, and I grew up in a church where make sure you have this facade that God is good all the time, and all the time God is good, and He is, that's truth, but you had to kind of psych yourself into that, and make sure as people see you, and you're like, hey, I'm good, man, how you doing? I'm good, man. I was going to use the word bold, but anyways, you know what I'm talking about. It's not real. And sometimes we feel like we have to put on a facade with God. And we have to come before His throne room and go, okay, God, I make sure I walk in here. Is there a right, do I need to bend the knee thing? Is there a formula to the words? Is there, let me just read this quote to you. I love this. One author says it this way: our prayers ascend to heaven's throne, regardless of the form we use. Our Father always hears His own, regardless of the words we choose. I feel like right now, there's some of you here that feel like you're the exception to the invitation. Some of you here are going, I don't know. That's great for somebody else, but I'm not sure that's good for me. Last week there was a moment, it was probably one of the most powerful moments I've experienced at Grace. Last Sunday, got a text message from a friend. As soon as the service was done, he texts me and he's like, hey, Mike, my son, who's in his 20s, doesn't go to church. My son was in tears on the ride home. Couldn't stop talking about church today. He said he's got so many questions, and I think he's so close. Is there a chance that we can meet? So Tuesday afternoon, we sat right there in the coffee shop lobby, and he pulled out his phone with all of his questions. And we went through every question, the best questions. I just want to encourage you, if you're here and you got doubts and questions, bring those to church. Bring those to God. We love your questions. You got doubts, bring them. Who doesn't? Who doesn't have questions? Who doesn't have doubts? And we sat there and we just went through each of the questions. We got done and I looked at him and I said, how are you feeling right now about your questions? And he said, I think I've got enough answers right now. I said, do you think you got enough of your questions answered to say yes to Jesus? He said yes. And his dad held his hand, and I held his hand, and he prayed to receive Jesus right there. And it is so awesome hearing his text this week. And there's some of you here going, Mike, do I have to wait till I get all my questions answered? And I'm just going to look at you and say no. Come to Jesus where you are. Wherever you're at in this season of your life, no matter what you're going through, the invitation is to come to Jesus. And when you say yes to Jesus, He gives you the all-access pass to the throne room of God. And it's in that throne room, that access, that relationship, that we can bring every struggle, every heartache, every pain. And He says, leave it with me. I want to replace it with hope. Leave it with me. Let me replace it with my power. Leave it with me. Let me replace it with purpose. Leave it with me. Let me give you the right perspective that you need. Leave all those questions. Let me give you this. I'm here for you. See, this is the words that He gives us. He talks about permission. He uses the word here. If we go back to it, He says hey, bring your intercession, which is this idea of this sense of thanksgiving. And I don't know about you, but when I go to pray with God, I so get focused on the things I need from Him that sometimes I don't stop enough to say, God, thank you for what you've already done. God, thank you, thank you. And that posture of gratitude and thankfulness is when we go, God, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm trying to get even better at this in my own personal life, where I spend more time thanking God than requesting to Him. Because what's amazing is as I come before God and go, wow, God, thank you for the things you've done. Thank you for this. I know we still got this prayer thing we haven't answered yet. That's a tough one, God. I'm still waiting for you on this one. But when I sit over here and I go, okay, God, I also want to just not obsess over that. So, God, just thank you for last week, and thank you for this, and thank you for that. And before you know it, it's like, whoa, God, you're doing way more than I realized. And when He says, come before God, His proximity, come before God with whatever you have, come before Him in thanksgiving and praise, and watch how doing that will solve the spiritual vertigo that we're walking in our lives. See, here's the last thing I'm going to share. He says in verse 2, that was only one verse we kind of looked at. He says, do this. And he says to pray and all these things. In verse 2, he says, for kings, pray for the kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in godliness and holiness. He's like, hey, Mike, this is how I read it today for me, for Mike, for personally. He's like, hey, Mike, pray for all these things in your personal life. And also pray for leaders, because whoever's in leadership will impact the peace you get to live in. And this is meant to be a liturgical thing in church services. I don't think churches do this enough. But this verse that he's saying, this was meant to be part of their liturgy in church services. I don't know if you know this, but like he was saying, hey, when you gather for church, pray with all those things, and also pray for those in leadership. Because whoever's in leadership will impact your lives, whether you get to live in peace or hostility or tyranny. Why is that so important? Because you know who was leading Rome at this time? Nero. When you look at who Nero was, I'll show you some artist renderings of Nero. There's all kinds of quotes that go with Nero. But one of the things Nero was known for, Nero was horrible. I mean, if you think how bad Hitler was, Nero made Hitler look like Cinderella. Nero was that bad. In fact, here's another rendering where Nero would take Christians, or those he didn't like, he would tie them to a pole, light them on fires, human torches, to light up their parties in the garden. That's his Thursday night. And now you're a church that his tyranny persecutes against. And so Paul is trying to encourage Timothy, like, pray for them. Like, pray for Nero. Pray, because, man, whoever leads will affect your life. And I won't get into this now, maybe later in this election year, but like elections have consequences. I'm not here to tell you who to pray for and all that. I'm just telling you, we all know that leadership, even who's your boss, can change the culture of where you work. You understand what I'm saying? So whoever's in positions of authority and leadership, like where they're at can affect everything as it trickles down. That's what he's saying here. And so as they're going through that, they're finding their bearing and their grounding. You can imagine the vertigo that's going on every single day, and yet they find this place of inner peace and power and strength to endure, to go through. And so here's what we're going to do right now. We're going to take some time. I said this first service, I wanted to take a risk today, and so we took a risk in first service, and we invite the worship team to come up here, and we're going to take a risk again, and it went really amazing first service. I feel like right now, and some of you've been tracking along sermons for the last several weeks, I feel like we're in days of a lot of deception. And I believe there's more ahead. I think it's imperative for the church today to find its bearing in the Word of God, in the presence of God, and in the perspective of God. Maybe you're going through something in your personal life that's just confusing, and I don't know what's going on, and where is this going to happen, and what's my life going to look like? It doesn't have to be something on the national or global. It could just be you personally going, man, I don't know what's going on. Let me tell you, there's an invitation that through prayer, together, we can find solace in the throne room of God. And I feel like I would kind of be a phony if we talked about it today and didn't even practice it. So we did this for service. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to ask you to jump in on this. I'm going to ask you, just hang in there for a second, hear me out. I'm going to ask that you would just turn and find 4 or 5 people. Hear me out. Some of y'all are like, okay. You know, I'm at a point though, even if you're here and you're like, man, I don't do the church thing. This might feel awkward. You know, I've had more people who don't go to church when we've done this and said, that's what makes the church feel like different than any other meeting I've been to. I'd rather you leave today going, that's a church that prays, not just a church that talks about it. And I really believe that as we pray today, spiritual deposits are being made for many of you this week. No matter what you're facing, I feel like this prayer time together, God's going to use it to make some deposits in you as you circle up and pray. So here's what it's going to look like. I'd ask you just to turn to 4 or 5. You don't have to move the chairs, but just find 4 or 5 people in your area. Maybe they're sitting behind you, sitting next to you. And I'm just gonna, let's start with that. So I'm gonna ask you to do that, and then that's the first assignment. I know it's scary, hang in there. And then I'm going to give you a few more instructions after that. So right now, would you just find 4 or 5 people around you? Go ahead and do that. Okay, now that you've found your group, not everybody has to pray. So just to let you off the hook on that. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to take just the last little bit of our service. We're going to close with this. And on the screen up here, I have some prayer prompts. Praying for peace personally, praying for peace over our state, our nation, our world. And there's some scripture, there's some things you can pray about just to kind of help prime the pump for prayer. Here's what I would ask in your groups, if at least just 1 or 2 of you could pray. There might be some of you here that are like, this is super uncomfortable, I get that. The best place for this, I know, is in community and small groups, but there's something about sometimes just taking a moment of declaration that this is the posture that we need to take. And what I'd ask is just 1 or 2 of you, you can just pray whatever God lays in your heart, but we're praying for peace. Here's some things you can pray into. You don't have to go through all of them, maybe 1 or 2. I'm just going to let you pray. And here's what I would say. If you're here and you're like, man, this is super uncomfortable. Maybe for you, you just need to sit and listen today. And that's your experience today, is just listen, but you're part of that. You're engaged with that, and that's the blessing for you. But I want to lean. There's some of you here, you've been Jesus followers 5, 10, 15 years, maybe even a year. I'm leaning on you right now. I'm leaning on you. Activate your faith right now. Step into this. It's no formula, but just pray. Would you guys just take some time? Let's just be praying right now. Go ahead and start praying. I'll pop back up here in a little bit. I'm going to step in just for a sec. And I don't want to cut off. I want you guys to keep praying. But I'm just going to create an opportunity here. I just want to say a couple last things. And if you want to stay after and keep praying and hanging out, you're welcome to do that. But I just want to take a moment right now. I really feel like if there's somebody here, maybe one or two of you, you came today. That gentleman that I talked to that we got to meet with this last week that gave his life to Jesus wasn't even supposed to be at church last week. He had an appointment for something, ended up getting canceled, and he came to church. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that every person that's in the room today is to hear the invitation of Jesus to say yes to him. And so I just want to have you guys, would you all just close your eyes for a second? But if you're here today and you've never said yes to Jesus, and you're like, Mike, I want to have access to the throne. I want that relationship with God. It's just this simple prayer. It's not about a formula. It's a posture of the heart. But I want to help you find the words. So you can pray something like this in the quietness of your own heart. Just whisper it inside your own heart. Jesus, I say yes to you today. Jesus, I know that you're my only hope. Jesus, I know that I'm lost without you. Jesus, thank you for dying for my sins. Thank you for loving me. So today, I say yes to you, and today I put my faith in you. That's just a simple posture of the heart. And what comes with that is all the promises to every person who says yes to him. He says, I'm for you. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. I'm with you forever and always. I just want to encourage you, if you said yes to Jesus today, that is his promises for you. You are right, new creation. You're a new person. The moment you believe, he does a new thing. He puts his spirit inside of you to empower you. I just want to encourage you, if you said yes to Jesus, share that with a friend, share it with someone you came to, share it with any of us with name badges. We just want to celebrate with you. And here's the last thing I'm going to share, church. You are now equipped. I really believe that God wants to release you now, that whatever was in these moments are meant to carry out into this week. I believe that what God's doing through his spirit, through this time of prayer, is meant to overflow this week. I don't know the week ahead of you. I don't know what steps you have to walk, but what I am certain is that Jesus sits on the throne. What I am certain on is that you can lean into him, that you can bring everything before him, that no matter what wants to spin you around and confuse you or catch you off guard, to bring you into a place of despair and confusion, I know this, that Jesus will be your grounding, he will be your hope, he'll be your rock, he will be everything you need. And I actually had this picture this morning. We came in and I saw the score clocks, and the Lord just like really highlighted something to me. I felt like there's some of you you've been taking some hits. You've been going through some hard things. And it feels like the enemy's been keeping score, racking up points on you. And I felt like the Lord said, but look at the score clock, because at the end of the game, Jesus says, I always win. And I feel like there's some of you right now that as you go into that perspective, that whatever you're going through, know that Jesus is on his throne. And so I just want to pray blessing over you. I'm going to pray. We're going to dismiss. If you want to stay and keep praying or hanging out, you're welcome to do that. Or you can leave and go get your cheeseburger, whatever it is. But can you just wherever you're at, let me just pray a blessing over you. Jesus, I thank you for everyone here. Jesus, I really believe that this posture right now is the secret to us overcoming. This posture right now, in community with others, seeking you, leaning into your presence, your power, your word. I pray, Jesus, that whatever is ahead of us, that you would give us discernment, you give us clarity, you give us hope, and that we would be hope givers, that whatever you've done in us, you would do that through us, that those that we come in contact with, that we would be beacons of hope, that we would provide the stability for others because of what you've given to us. So I pray, Jesus, let this be the overflow. We pray for peace. We pray for that peace in our own homes, our businesses, our nation, our world. And Jesus, I pray blessing over everyone here. We pray this in your powerful, awesome name. Amen. God bless you guys, and we'll see you next week.